The Void 2016, a brilliant cosmic horror mix of Hellraiser and The Thing, explored in detail. What do you say about a film that looks like high-end Hollywood stuff, but is actually made on a shoestring budget? The Canadian horror flick The Void fits the bill perfectly, and it's amazing how much director duo Jeremy and Stephen Kostanski managed to fit into this movie. The budget constraint was so bad that they had to resort to crowdfunding for the creature effects, and yet there is something intriguing about the narrative that got horror fans excited. The Void is more of a cosmic horror movie, and those who've seen the likes of Hellraiser and The Thing will certainly find some similarities. Clearly the makers purposely provided a flavour of the 80s, from the creatures to the shocking moments, and it's all with a throwback to horror classics with a modern polish. But what this movie does best is use ambiguity to its advantage. The mystery is up for interpretation, and the makers don't spoon feed you anything here. In this video, we will take you through this fascinating work of art and try to explore the multiple possibilities that the narrative threw open. We will move through the thick and thin of the plot and try to explain the crazy burst of events that make The Void such a showstopper.
Before we go into our list, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click from you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin.
I can give Allison to you. That's what you want, isn't it?
The Void, a nightmarish realm from the world beyond. The film opens with a bang, and the very first scene is shrouded in mystery. We see a rural home and two people, a man and a woman, trying to make a break from the house. They stumble outside in desperation as they are being chased by two armed men. The woman is shot and wounded, but the man manages to run off into the darkness of the night. The two armed men douse her in gasoline and burn her to death, and we see them getting in their car to go after the guy. While all this unfolds, a mysterious figure in a white robe stands watching the events from a distance. Its entire body is covered by the cloth, and there is a black triangle at the centre of its face. The plot then moves on to a police officer named Daniel Carter, who is on duty and patrolling in his squad car. He is checking things with the dispatch when the man who escaped previously crawls out of the bushes. Daniel initially thinks it has to be a drunk, but on closer inspection, he realises that the individual is seriously injured. He checks with the dispatch regarding the options of immediate medical assistance, and he's disappointed to know that the closest hospital might not be equipped to handle such a serious situation, because it was ravaged by a fire recently. However, the next hospital is quite a distance away, and Daniel doesn't take any chances with the patient. He reluctantly heads to the nearest option. And just as Daniel brings the man through the front door, the active medical personnel jump into action. The nurse summons Dr. Richard Powell and another nurse named Beverly, and together they take the man away for further treatment. In the meantime, we're introduced to a pregnant young lady, Maggie, and her grandfather Ben, who are waiting for her delivery at any moment. It seems like everyone knows everyone in this small town, because the characters are well acquainted with each other. The doctor notices that there are strange needle marks on the man's arms, and it's clear that he's a junkie. Daniel washes off the bloodstains on his uniform, and he is brought coffee by the nurse we saw initially. Her name is Allison, and we learn that she is Daniel's estranged wife. Dr. Powell interrupts the meeting, and when Allison leaves, he tells Daniel to let go of his grief. The doctor lost his own daughter, and he knows how overwhelming the loss can be. His only advice to Daniel is to go easy on Allison, because the couple apparently lost their child during the delivery process. An intern named Kim is joking with one of the patients and is clearly frustrated with her duty in this understaffed hospital that is on the verge of being closed down.
Even a nurse?
I am in training.
The patient tells her that he'd rather get some sleep, and Kim leaves the room. Daniel looks through the deserted hospital and stumbles upon the room of the patient. The nurse we saw earlier, Beverly, is standing beside him, but something doesn't appear right. He approaches closer and is shocked to see that Beverly has stabbed the patient in the eye with a pair of scissors. It's a gruesome moment as she pulls the blades out slowly, and when she turns, we discover that she has mutilated her entire face, removing the skin. She seems to be in a trance and tells Daniel that it's not her actual face.
What the fuck are you doing, Beverly?
This isn't my face.
And despite repeated pleas from Daniel to stop, she keeps approaching him. He is compelled to shoot her, and she dies on the spot. The other nurses and Dr. Powell rush in at the sound of gunfire, and they find Daniel in a dazed state. He's traumatized by what happened in the course of time and moves to the nearest bathroom where he passes out briefly. During this time, he has strange visions of a dark and desolate landscape with a mysterious black triangular mass. Daniel regains consciousness and feels he should report the incident immediately, but Dr. Powell and Allison tell him to take things slow. He finds out that a state trooper has arrived on the scene. This cop named Mitchell reveals that he's investigating a bizarre mass murder at a nearby house, and the man that Daniel brought in has clear connections with the case.
Your guy in the other room.
What about him?
We got a major bloodbath about 20 miles north.
Daniel is still insistent about calling in about the incident, and he steps out of the hospital to get his car parked outside. However, the radio systems aren't working, and he suddenly spots an odd humanoid figure at a distance. This entity is dressed in a white robe with a black triangle over its face. A confused Daniel tries to talk to it, but he's shocked by the sound of a loud foghorn at a distance. If you've watched Game of Thrones, the sound is uncannily similar to the horns blown at the Night's Watch when the wildlings or the White Walkers arrived. The lights of the hospital flicker and the thing suddenly attacks Daniel. He's taken aback, and although he pushes off the attacker, there is a puncture wound to his chest. He somehow manages to run back into the hospital and faints from the constant bleeding. Dr. Powell, Kim and Allison tend to his wound, and he is awakened by a scream from the room where the junkie was kept. Mitchell and Daniel rush in there only to find that Beverly has morphed into some kind of tentacle monster and is attacking the druggie. They manage to free him just in time and lock the creature in the chamber. To add to their woes, they discover that the hospital has been surrounded by the mysterious people who are all dressed alike. While everyone is panicking, we see the two men from the first scene enter the hospital.
Okay, make safe. Make safe. Okay, drop it. Okay, just drop it.
The duo holds everyone at gunpoint and demands that the junkie be immediately handed over to them. We later learn that the two men are father and son, and for the rest of the narrative, we'll call them that. Everyone tries to de-escalate the situation, but the junkie manages to grab Maggie as a hostage and takes a scalpel to her throat. In this tense moment, Dr. Powell attempts to calm him down and approaches him. But it creates a horrible situation because the junkie stabs him in the neck and he drops dead on the floor. At this moment, Beverly, who turned into a tentacled monster, attacks Mitchell and forces her appendages down his throat. Father and son attack the creature and hack at it with an axe, chopping off Mitchell's head in the act. Having seen the fate of Beverly, they take Mitchell's body and set it on fire before rolling it outside the clinic's premises. The father tells everyone that the last time they trusted someone, his son got injured badly, and we get a hint that in the past, there has been more of the horror that is unravelling now. Probably due to this injury, the son cannot speak more than a few sounds. Maggie starts experiencing labour pains, and Allison is keen to head to the medicine storage room to gather some of the stuff that can help treat her. On the other hand, father and son exhausted their bullets while shooting at the monster that attacked Mitchell. Daniel has a shotgun strapped in his car and he intends to get the gun along with the ammunition in the trunk. Stepping out of the hospital is risky business, but it's a risk that they must be willing to take if they're to have any chance of surviving the nightmare. They cautiously walk out and notice that Daniel's car has been rolled further away. Luckily, the cloaked people are nowhere to be seen, and they rush to get the gun and bullets. However, the father notices a cloaked figure at a distance, and when the headlights of the car are switched on, they are shocked to find many others silently standing nearby with knives.
Come on, goddammit! Fuck's sake!
One of them attacks the son, and Daniel manages to free the gun just in time to shoot the cloaked assailant dead. They run back inside, and it's clear that there will be no escaping the situation with the building surrounded. All this while Allison heads to the medicine storage room alone. And just as she collects the things she needs, we see Dr. Powell behind her. The same doctor who had been stabbed to death a while ago. As Daniel and the father-son pair enter, they find the body of Dr. Powell missing and immediately head to the storage room to get Allison. Unfortunately, she isn't there anymore, with only her bag left behind. They uncover Dr. Powell's office, within which is a tin box filled with disturbing Polaroid pictures of naked women and mutilated bodies. The phone in the room rings, and when Daniel answers the call, Powell reveals that he has some amazing plans for Allison, and Daniel should submit to him instead of trying to fight.
But I'm doing what I have to make it right.
They all decide to interrogate the junkie, threatening to crush his fingers with a hammer if he doesn't give them the answers they desire. The junkie reveals that he doesn't know anything in detail, and it looks like some kind of cult is at work here. He was lured into the house with promises of crystal meth, but once inside, it was a hell that welcomed him. The cultists would watch the junkies fornicate and sacrifice them in vicious rituals. The guy managed to survive because the father-son duo happened to attack the house and killed everyone present there. We later learned that the father and son had gone there to get their revenge because the cult had sacrificed their family. The three men and the druggie head towards the burned section of the hospital and find themselves in a maze-like area where there is a giant triangle and various other symbols on the floor. The scene then switches to Allison, who wakes up strapped to an operating table. Dr. Powell is standing nearby with his back to her, mutilating himself as he explains how he ended up in this condition.
Well, losing Sarah destroyed me.
After his daughter died, the shock of the loss led him to look for answers about life after death. Thus began his quest of trying to transform himself into something far greater than his human self. This allowed him to come to a point where there was a possibility to revive his child. He probably encountered some force that showed him the way, and since then, he formed a cult to help him achieve his goal. He has conducted numerous experiments since then, and it turns out that even the hospital fire was the doing of some of his unsuccessful creations. These creatures desired to die, but he forcibly kept them alive. He discloses that Allison is going to turn into something greater than herself, and when the sheets are removed, we see her engorged stomach with something moving around inside. Meanwhile, Daniel and the others stumble upon a room that resembles a slaughterhouse, with mutilated corpses everywhere. The stench is unbearable, and the corpses are the ones Dr. Powell experimented with. They barely recover from the shock of the room when they experience strange visions. For instance, the father is disturbed by the image of his dead wife, and the cadavers around seemingly attack them. They fight these off, but the father is disturbed to see his wife holding their baby. The son follows him as he walks off in a disillusioned state. Daniel and the junkie try to flee, but one of the creatures grabs the junkie and smashes his head against the floor. Our attention is drawn to the main hospital, where Maggie's condition worsens further. Kim is forced to try and perform a C-section, although she barely has any knowledge about the procedure. She starts to panic, and the grandfather pleads with her to be courageous and go ahead with the surgery.
No. Please!
Sorry, I can't.
However, in a sudden turn of events, we see Maggie slitting the throat of her grandfather. We come to the haunting realization that Maggie is also a part of the cult, and she's carrying Dr. Powell's baby. The cultists break into the hospital with no resistance, and Kim manages to hide in a cabinet. Elsewhere, the son follows his father through the tunnels, and surprisingly, it transforms into their home. The father is seen grieving his dead wife and infant baby, and he's furious at his son for failing to protect them. The son manages to break him out of the illusion, and he recollects himself. Daniel is suffering his own visions, where he witnesses his pregnant wife on the operating table, reliving the trauma of his lost child. Just as he tries to comfort his wife, the illusion breaks, and he watches a grotesque form of Allison with an exploded stomach that formed tentacles all over the room. Dr. Powell reminds Daniel that she has been given what she always desired, and she's made into a mother. Daniel battles his pain and uses the axe to hack Allison. He finds himself in a room with an illuminated triangle, and Dr. Powell lectures him about his ideas. He offers him a position in his cult and states that all the others have gathered to experience the change themselves. According to him, Daniel could even get his child back if he's willing to die first. Daniel refuses, and Maggie appears from behind and stabs him in the back. We see him collapse from the impact, and Dr. Powell transforms into a horrendous, skinless, inhuman form. He states that he's finally found a way to restore his daughter, and after a horrifying birthing process, Maggie gives birth to a twisted creature which Dr. Powell calls his child. The father and son are fleeing from a monster and the father is caught. As the creature pushes the tentacles inside his body, he manages to douse themselves in flammable liquid and requests the son to set him ablaze. The son obeys. Dr. Powell tries to convince Daniel one last time and offers a life with Allison if he gives in. However, Daniel uses all his remaining strength to grab Powell and drags him through the triangular void of light. They disappear, and so does the triangle. It seems that this causes the entire place to rumble and crumble. The son is being chased by the half-burned creature through a hallway that keeps getting narrower. Eventually, the monster is crushed between the walls and the son jumps out into the main hospital premises just in time. He finds Kim hiding in the cabinet, and the two try to comfort each other after everything. The last scene shows Daniel and Allison holding hands and standing in the same dark and desolate landscape that Daniel saw in his earlier vision. There is a huge floating black pyramid at a distance, and it's not clear where exactly they've ended up.
She's waiting for you. All you have to do is let go.
The twisted ending. This movie is like a puzzle with some missing pieces that the makers purposely refrained from providing the audience. The open-ended climax is open for interpretation, and there are several fan theories that have already been circulated. We will offer our own and leave it to your wise judgment to pick the one that you like.
A monster that thinks he's God.
I'm disappointed.
Was it all in Daniel's mind? Surely we've all heard of limbo, a comatose state of mind where a human hallucinates bizarre events while knocked unconscious. This state may cause some visuals that hardly have any explanation, and we think it might be a possibility that the whole thing was simply Daniel hallucinating. If you observe closely, the shooting of the nurse did some serious damage to his mental state. It could be assumed that the nurse lost her mind and ended up killing the patient. After she attacked Daniel and he shot her dead, he never regained his composure. We did see him having strange visions when he was knocked unconscious briefly in his traumatized state. What if he never really woke up from that? The initial slaughter could just be some thugs or cultists, and the junkie any regular addict who escaped the crossfire.
Oh no.
It might seem a tad far-fetched, but it is likely that such a traumatizing condition would make Daniel witness his worst fears. He never really recovered after losing his child, and the impact shows in his dreams throughout the narrative. It might seem a bit out of line, and is certainly a buzzkill, but do give it some thought, guys. Was it all in the Hellraiser universe? The fans of Hellraiser will have to agree on this one. We've already spoken about the clear influence on the film. The scene with the walls closing in and the portal shutting out completely just as one of the protagonists escape is something we've witnessed before. But what if there's more than just influence working in the story? What if the whole hellish realm is the same as the one from Hellraiser? The notorious Cenobites could be summoned from another dimension, and they would conduct their business in our world before leaving for theirs. It's not too odd to suggest that Dr. Powell was possibly a Cenobite himself. After the loss of his daughter, he did explore some unthinkable domain, and maybe got in touch with the Leviathan. If you observe closely, you will find some uncanny similarities between him and Pinhead.
The others have all gathered to witness my daughter's rebirth. We want the man who did this.
After his transformation, he clearly looks like Pinhead without all the pins. If he's a Cenobite leader, it explains all the things he could do. His disciples are simply Cenobites from that alternate dimension, and he can bring forth horrifying creatures to do his bidding. Pinhead had a deep, dark secret himself, and Dr. Powell had no less. The place where we see Daniel and Allison in at the end could be the corners of that hell, with the huge pyramid-shaped triangle being the Leviathan. Maybe it was an attempt to take over our world, but Daniel's heroics ruined the plans. We have to say that this is something to consider seriously, given how everything pans out. Is it all the doing of The Thing? If there is another obvious similarity, it's the appearance of the creatures. Those who have watched and enjoyed The Thing will know that it can transform itself to take various forms. What if The Thing took over Dr. Powell in his moments of vulnerability? The Thing does not blow its cover unless it's absolutely necessary, and until Dr. Powell was killed, there was no need to transform or switch bodies. In fact, this got us thinking about the possibility of multiple things that are planning to take over the world. If we assume that Dr. Powell is The Thing, and so are many others, then they could simply be working together to infect the others. Do you remember seeing anyone else in town? Right from the patrolling duties to the journey to the hospital. There is absolutely no one else apart from the characters, and it could mean that the takeover had been almost complete. The initial sketches for The Thing clearly resemble the tentacle monster that we see in this movie. The horrible mutilations are the experiments they have been conducting to perfect their mutation. The element of cosmic horror in the narrative is quite clear, and that would further explain bringing in some strange entity trying to take over humanity. In the end, Daniel managed to send them all back to their realm, but he is stuck there himself along with his wife, the ultimate sacrifice for mankind. Egyptian god of death. Egyptian mythology is different from the most innovative horror movies, and it might have an explanation for the alternate realm. It's believed that many of the Egyptian gods could guide the souls of the dead through the afterlife. This afterlife was called the Underworld, and it had only one entrance, the tomb of the deceased. Osiris would judge the soul, and those who deserved a peaceful afterlife would be granted the same. If the cultists were practicing some sort of Egyptian rituals, it does make sense.
I've seen this place before. This was all over the house we cleaned out.
Great horrors are in store for those who are guilty, and Dr. Powell could be one of the condemned souls. He's trying to gain more subjects by summoning strange creatures and numerous souls during his existence on Earth. The pyramid, or the mysterious triangle that plays such a crucial role in the movie, could simply be a doorway to the other world. So what happens to Daniel and his wife according to this theory? Well, they're probably in the peaceful afterlife, having successfully sent Dr. Powell back to where he belonged. That does explain the absence of any threatening entity in the last scene, and it almost looks peaceful. Our final words. We probably went a little overboard with our creative liberties here, but you should let us know in the comments section about the one that you find the closest to an actual possibility. The filmmakers have clearly mentioned that they're not interested in going ahead with a sequel, and this means that the storyline is left here for good. If something is up for interpretation, what's the harm in thinking out of the box? We do wish they came up with something to explain it all, because The Void is too interesting a production to be left on a cliffhanger.
This is all the time we had for today's episode. We hope you guys liked it. It would be awesome if you guys can take some time to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to tell us which topic you want us to cover in the comment section. Have a fantastic day ahead and stay safe.